My name is Adrienne. I'm a competent woman. Welcome to Tuesday Talks on Facebook Live. I am the president CEO of Women for Sobriety, and I am just here to share with you today a few thoughts about Statement 8. So, our Statement 8 reads: the fundamental object of life is emotional and spiritual growth. And the thought action is: daily I put my life into a proper order, knowing which are the priorities. And I'm gonna be honest with you. It took me a while to love this statement, but I really do love it now. But it took me a while. I usually start these out with a little like WFS statement history lesson about the changes that the statements have had over the years. And number 8 is our second statement that has never been changed. I can't find any evidence of any shifts in this statement or the thought action. So they're both just how they were from the very start. Before we get into some tips and tricks about this statement, I wanted to talk a little bit about what does this mean, right? So emotional and spiritual growth. And we get a lot of people who aren't feeling super spiritual when they first come to recovery. And that's okay. That's okay. I mean, it's kind of a spirit killing thing to have an addiction. So like a lot of people like me, this is a hard one to kind of get a hold of in the beginning. And with some other paths in recovery, there's a lot of dependence on or focus, I guess, on higher power and the God thing and that kind of stuff. So what does WFS mean when it talks about spiritual growth? I think it's important that we kind of break that down. So, when our founder, Dr. Jean Kirkpatrick, talked about this statement, um, she really talked about spiritual growth or spirituality as our connection to something greater. Maybe our connection to a higher power, but maybe just our connection to the world around us, or our connection to others. And I believe that a lot of what she wrote talked about, it's really about what gives your life purpose and meaning, right? So when I feel like I'm living in a way that is purposeful and meaningful, then that's when I feel the most spiritually grounded, and the most spiritually satisfied. So for me, this statement has always been about how can I tune in to what gives me purpose and what gives me meaning in my life and build on that and create a life that feels meaningful and worthwhile. The thought action for this statement is really about priorities, right? And prioritizing. Daily, I put my life into a proper order. And Dr. Kirkpatrick was a huge list maker. She loved her to-do lists. I am not a big list maker, but I do like to focus on what's the priority today, right? What is really important, right? And so I can look at a list of phone calls or a list of chores I have to complete. Those aren't really a huge, in the bigger sense, priority, right? So, but they could be linked, right? So I have to clean my house. Well, if that helps me feel more grounded and connected, and gives me meaning, then maybe that is my priority, right? If cleaning makes me feel peaceful and attuned, then that might be a good priority, and that might be in line with my emotional and spiritual growth. So I don't know. Those are just my thoughts on that. One thing I think that is really valuable about this program, and kind of my first tip for this statement and applying this statement, is really that your spirituality gets to be whatever it is for you. And for some people, that might include religious beliefs. And for some people, it's walking in nature or, connecting with others. Um, Whatever that is to you, that's a really personal thing, and that's a personal journey that you need to take. And, sometimes it happens early on in recovery and sometimes it happens later on. And that's okay too. I think a lot of us come to recovery feeling pretty spiritually bereft. And so, taking some time for that to get back in touch with us is might be expected even. So, but trying to explore what feeds your soul, what brings you purpose and meaning and connection. That's a really important thing to do, and what that looks like exactly for you is going to be really different than what it means to me. One of my other tips, so of course, Jean loved the to-do lists. So, that's part of priorities. Maybe consider, though, when you're doing your to-do list, look at it and go, okay, how are these things tied to my emotional and spiritual growth? And I think we can look at our list, our to-do list. Like, say a mom is looking at her to-do list and she's got to pick up the kids from soccer or whatever. Can that be an opportunity for emotional and spiritual growth? Maybe it can. Maybe that's an opportunity for connection with your child while you're driving in the car, right? And you can kind of recognize how that can be an opportunity for emotional and spiritual growth. What I really like to do is to write to-do lists. So a to-do list for me feels overwhelming. I've got all these things to do. I like to reflect on my day at the end of the day and write a to-do list. Like, look what I did. Ta-da! And that helps me recognize what I have accomplished. Um, so I like the to-do list as opposed to the to-do list. There is a tip that I learned early on called the post-it note process. And this is a way of prioritizing tasks and reducing that overwhelm. So if you're someone who gets really overwhelmed by the to-do lists, the post-it note process is you write each step of each task on a different post-it note. And then you make a pile of the post-it notes. So you only have to look at the top one. And so once you're done with the top one, you rip it off, throw it away, I don't know, rip it up, put a gold star on it, whatever you want to do. Right? But that way you always only have one thing to do. So you don't have to think about all these other things. And this can also, play into statement 4 and statement 2, controlling your negative thoughts or being overwhelmed by problems, right? If you just have one thing to do on your list, might be much easier than a 10 item list. So that's the post-it note project. And my last kind of tip about priorities and working statement 8 is goals. And Dr. Kirkpatrick was also a big fan of goal setting. And, it was kind of the idea that if you're moving forward, it's hard to fall backward. So part of how she moved forward was with goals. And I would challenge you to consider setting some emotional or spiritual goals. So our culture really reinforces, oh, you get a promotion, you have kids by the age of whatever, you want to be married by a certain age, whatever. But how would you feel? What are you going for there? Are you going for a feeling of connection and love? Make that your goal. Maybe you've always wanted to go to a spiritual or a religious relevant site, right? Like go visit the Vatican or go to Mecca or wherever. Maybe consider setting that a goal and something to work towards and move towards. Um, Maybe you want to deepen your meditation process, and that really helps you. Set a goal. I want to be able to sit for 20 minutes and start off small, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and work towards a longer sit. So I think we can be really task focused when it comes to physical things or work things or chores, but consider becoming focused on reaching new heights in your spirituality. So that is my Tuesday talk about emotional and spiritual growth. I think, and I'll leave you with this because this was also one thing that I really learned from Dr. Kirkpatrick's writing is that the timing of our spiritual awakening, so to speak, in recovery can be really different. And most people that I know in recovery have had a major spiritual shift. They just look at life differently. Their heart and their soul just feels different, more content, more at peace, more whatever. Uh, but the timeline of that can really vary. I think my kind of like aha moment came about a year, well, maybe like 10, 11 months into my sobriety. And I was driving to a WFS meeting and I was stuck in traffic because it was Seattle. And I just kind of had this aha moment of like, I'm in a really different place right now. Like, I'm happy, I'm content. And I reflected on all the things that I had been doing for the last 10 months and all of the things in my life that had changed. And that seemed like a really big change and a really big spiritual awakening. It wasn't a bright white flash moment. It was it was the culmination of 1,000 tiny moments that had happened in the year leading up to that. And so I think most people, you're going to feel that spiritual shift and take a moment to reflect, has there been a spiritual shift? And are you noticing anything different about the way you move through life? And sometimes a little bit of reflection can help us recognize the progress that we've made. And if you don't feel it yet, that's okay too. It can take time. It can take a lot of time. Some of us, it takes more time than others, and that's okay too. All right. So that is my statement 8. Hope you like it. I know we have a personal story lined up for next week. And Judith is always on the lookout for more people to share their personal stories. We're putting together a little self-interview tip sheet, and you'll get lots of guidance and hand holding. So if you want to share your personal story on Facebook Live, and just so you know, you will have full control over the recording. It goes under your account and your control. So consider sharing that, and it'll only be accessed in the group. And I hope to hear your story sometime soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.